Hello all. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. And thank you for signing up and attending this webinar hosted by the Global Legal Insights series in partnership with the Association of Governance, Risk and Compliance. My name is Ben Lawless, and I'm the publisher of the GLI AI Machine Learning and Big Data Guide. First, I'd like to say that we appreciate your attendance as we begin an hour-long session around some of the current legal challenges when it comes to dealing with artificial intelligence. It goes without saying that there is a lot to get through from both topical and geographical aspects, and our panel will do their very best and are really excited to provide some high-class insights and thoughts around this topic, which has garnered such huge interest over the past few years in particular. We welcome contributions from you in the audience. Our platform is able to take questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. So please do comment and ask questions today. We'd love to hear from you. Just so you're all aware, today's session is being recorded and will be available publicly in the coming week online and to download. Before handing over to the panel, I have 2 points to run through briefly. Firstly, Global Legal Insights is proud to have launched just a few months ago our 6th edition of our Global Legal Insights to AI, Machine Learning and Big Data Laws and Regulations, led by one of our panelists joining us today nonetheless, Charles Kerrigan, partner at the law firm CMS based in London. The GLI AI Machine Learning and Big Data publication has insights into 22 jurisdictions and takes deep dives into topics around ethical AI, generative AI, and the regulation of AI in the US. We'll be providing everyone in attendance an opportunity to download the 2024 publication on a complimentary basis after this webinar, so do keep your eyes open for that communication. Secondly, I'd like to thank our partner, the Association of Governance, Risk and Compliance. A brilliant organization supporting the GRC community through knowledge exchange, networking, and idea incubation. The programs that the AGRC run are raising standards of ethics and integrity in the world of compliance and boosting the industry's knowledge and understanding of best practice, professional development, and new technologies. So if you haven't seen much about the AGRC, please do go and have a look at their website, agrc.org, after this webinar. And feel free to reach out to myself or Mateo for more information. That brings me on nicely to welcome Mateo, Global Manager at the AGRC. Mateo will be our moderator today. He will do the formal introductions of the panel and move the discussion forwards. So please do enjoy the session, everyone. Good luck to the panel, and Mateo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ben, for that brilliant introduction. Again, we are also very, very, excited and proud and happy to partner up with GLI and the GLG group. So check them out too, and all the work they're doing within the publications and the legal sector, etc. They have publications on a wide array of topics. A lot of the topics that are touched upon by AGRC, including financial crime prevention, AML, etc. So I mean, it's a brilliant publications, and I recommend them to everyone. So without saying much more, I'm going to basically pass on the baton to the panelists. We have 3 brilliant panelists with us here today. We have 7 questions that we have drafted that should cover a wide array of topics related to AI, from regulatory compliance to digital assets to intellectual property rights. So there's a lot to cover. I know we can spend probably a couple of days just discussing AI and how it impacts a wide array of industries, but we're trying to focus it on these 3 issues. Of course, if you have any questions for our panelists, drop the questions in the Q&A within the Zoom platform, and I'm going to try to incorporate those into the discussion, or we might save them for the last 10 minutes or so if we have some time to cover those. So I'm not going to read any bios. I'm going to allow each one of you to sort of introduce yourselves and let us know, who you are, what is your role, what is your interest in artificial intelligence, and then we'll basically jump straight into the questions. So Boriana, please.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Boriana Guimberteau. I'm a partner at Stephenson Harwood in Paris. I'm specialized in IP, and I'm also part of the tech group of Stephenson Harwood. very interested in new technologies such as blockchain, NFTs, AI, and I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Boriana. Luis?
Thank you. I'm Luis Fernando Parra with Complyport. I head up the regulatory technology solutions for our group, and that includes things from, well, essentially what I've been working on for close to 2 decades, which is technology that helps professionals do their job more efficiently. That's been everything from workflow tools through today generative AI tools like Lika Chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Last but not least, Charles?
Thanks, Mateo. Hi, everyone. I'm a deep tech lawyer at CMS, which is an international law firm. I sit in London, but work internationally. And as Ben was kind enough to say, I helped out with the book. So was very pleased to be able to help people kind of find their feet in relation to AI law and regulation.
Excellent. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, everyone, for their introductions. So let's get into the meat of the matter, I guess. And to sort of set the stage, let's look a little bit at some of the, let's look at the regulatory framework and some of the standards in AI. So this first question, it applies to all 3 of you, since all 3 of you work in different sort of sectors. But let's start with Boriana. Basically, the question reads, what do you see as the most critical regulatory challenges facing AI today? And how are international standards evolving to address these issues? There's a sub-question to that, which is basically, do you have any thoughts on the impact the EU AI Act will have on the adoption of AI across a range of industries? So, Boriana, you want to give us your perspective on intellectual property or anything else that might, that you might fancy?
Yeah. Well, of course, there are a lot of benefits related to AI that we all know, but also a lot of challenges. And the challenges being related to discrimination, bias, privacy rights, infringement of privacy rights, transparency, etc. So there is clearly a need for a legal framework. And a lot of countries are working on legislations, for example, China, or in California in the US. We are quite lucky in the EU to have this AI Act that was adopted on the 1st of August this year. And this is the first, let's say, legal framework on AI worldwide. What is interesting is that it's very similar in terms of outreach and in terms of governing principles to the GDPR on data protection. So it's quite has the same approach also to setting up rules for providers of AI systems, whether within the EU or outside the EU, but with an impact on the EU market, to regulate and to respect the rules that are set up in this AI Act. And the thing is that, in fact, it will have an impact on the adoption of AI and in the EU and across different sectors. Because, first of all, it is creating, let's say, it's a risk-based AI regulation, and it classifies the AI systems by level of risk. So there's the unacceptable risk, for example, manipulation of human behavior, facial recognition, things like that, that are prohibited. But then you have the high-risk AI, the general purpose AI, and limited risk AI. So different types of systems that are classified, and depending on their classification, their providers, their distributors, importers, and users will have different types of requirements that they will have to satisfy with. I was talking about the fact that it will have an impact on different sectors, because, for example, the Act enumerates various AI applications that are deemed high risk due to their potential impact on public safety and fundamental rights. And, for example, in different sectors, for example, in healthcare systems, AI that are used for medical diagnosis, for treatment recommendations in patient care monitoring, are considered as high risk. So they, in this sector, they will have to really apply the requirements that are in the AI Act. Same thing for the transportation systems or for other critical infrastructures such as energy distribution, water supply, or telecommunication networks. So the AI Act will come into force progressively during the next 2 years. And yes, so they will also work together. I mean, the text will be implemented together with other EU regulations such as GDPR, as far as personal data is concerned. So it will add on the different existing regulations already in the EU.
Excellent. Thank you, Boriana. Anything to add, Charles, I guess, from a digital asset sort of perspective, or Luis from a regulatory compliance? Anything to add there? Charles?
Yeah, shall I jump in? Maybe before I sort of add digital assets to the mix, I just build on the excellent answer that Boriana's given. So I think she's described the architecture of the legislation, and so I was thinking as she was talking that maybe I could add in some examples of where we would find AI. So the starting point is probably to think that AI is everywhere. There are lots of products and services that are calling out their use of AI, but there are many more that are using AI integrations, or they're updating their systems with the use of AI, and they're simply describing it as a product which has got now better functionality. So when we are talking to different kinds of firms that come and are saying to folks like Boriana and I, where do we start? One of the things that often is helpful is for them to understand the nature of where tools are used in organizations. And it might be helpful to give one that's probably obvious and one that might be less obvious. So if we think about credit scoring, which is a sort of relatively neutral thing, it's not that super high risk personal data for medical purposes that Boriana was calling out in healthcare. It is a functional tool that's used by banks and fintechs. But where there is automated decision making using algorithms and AI, that is now in Europe subject to the AI Act, and in most jurisdictions subject to some sort of regulation. So the reason that this is thought suitable for regulation is that there is an outcome which is affecting customers. So in this case, it may be an application for a loan is approved or declined based on some work that's being done by an algorithm. So the regulation is tending to force in things that we would generally associate with regulation. That those decisions should be fair, they should be transparent, they should be subject to human oversight, those things that Boriana described. Second, I'll use a slightly different example because it's less well known outside the industry. So most firms, HR departments use AI. That sounds like an odd thing to say, but any large organization is using CV sifting software that has some AI integration, or looking at employee performance metrics. There's now a lot of AI in that because it's obvious. Where there is data, we now have AI. So we've got AI in a situation which is obviously sensitive and personal, things that your HR team know about, your decisions that a future employer may make in relation to you are highly sensitive, and to the extent where, although we will maybe talk about the EU Act, I think today, one of the first pieces of directly applicable AI regulation in the US and in the world was New York State level regulation looking at algorithmic bias in HR, essentially systems that are used to offer or not offer people jobs. So I just add those bits for now as a way of thinking about where is AI used in an organization? Because one of the things that the EU AI Act is requiring people to do is what we call a model inventory. So in order to test your compliance with the Act, you've got to make a list of all the AI that you're using in your business, and not everyone has it. So you've got this starting point of identify AI, and then you can do the analysis of how it's categorized under the Act, as Boriana described, on a sort of a risk-based basis.
Thank you, Charles. Luis, anything else to add there?
Well, just briefly, just to add on to what they've said, I just want to touch on the one segment of transparency, which is real important and really gets down to the practical use when it's in there. It is a tool. Having AI does not forgive an entity from still being obligated to comply to the business or regulatory framework. They're still on the hook for those decisions. Senior managers still need to know how it was done. And so when selecting a tool, it's important that you take into account all the regulations that Boriana covered, the transparency, the data privacy aspects of it, but also that you have a good understanding of how it's making a decision, especially when it comes to denying a transaction or a service to somebody. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Luis. Okay, so that set the stage for the discussion. Now we're going to sort of break out into 3 different branches because we have 3 experts in different topics. So to start off with Charles and a discussion on digital assets. Everyone's fascinated by digital assets these days. So let's look at the combination of AI and digital assets. And the question is, how do you perceive the legal landscape evolving for digital assets and AI, particularly when it comes to tokenization and NFTs, for instance?
Sure, I'm going to try and give you an unusual answer here. So this is to attempt to avoid heading off down a rabbit hole of how the technologies can operate together. So let's try this. I guess the only thing better than an area of legal uncertainty, which we have with digital assets, is combining that topic with another area subject to some legal uncertainty, AI. So although we've got the EU AI Act, we get to see the supporting papers that talk about the practical guidance. So we are currently operating subject to some degree of uncertainty in relation to both of those topics. Europe has got ahead, so it has digital asset specific regulation, the market in crypto assets regulation, and it's now got the EU AI Act, which is now in force and being implemented according to a timetable that has now started, which is why we're talking today. I love this question, and I was thinking about how I would approach it. The thing that strikes me about the application of AI and digital assets together, and this relates to some projects that I've been asked to work on, is we now have global digital and crypto asset regulation being built out jurisdiction by jurisdiction, harmonized across the EU, but generally not harmonized in other areas. So there is a huge amount of new regulation that's been written in relation to these products and assets. One of the things that AI can do is support the analysis and application of all of that new regulation. So we know that AI is capable, it brings computer vision into existence, and generative AI means that AI can produce text. So the combination of computer vision, natural language processing, and generative AI essentially means AI can read and write. And I don't need to get into a discussion about the level of its understanding. It does well enough to be suitable at engaging with all of this new regulation that's coming through for the digital assets world. Lots of folks in that world trying to come to terms with all the new regulation in a cost-effective way. So you don't want to hire a lawyer in every country in the world and have them charge you money to explain the rules in their country. You can use AI tools to start supporting your own understanding. You can ask questions in natural language to expert systems that have been exposed to these rules. The rules, we're going to get on with Boriana about questions of copyrights, but generally here, regulators are not trying to hide their rules. They want them to be accessible and understood by people who are trying to engage with the industry that they're regulating. And so I think AI is a really terrific tool to help the digital assets, crypto assets community engage with all the new regulation and be compliant and build their tools safely. We could get later on into the topic around the crypto tokens that have launched with embedded AI and automation and personalization and all those amazing things that AI brings. But I think there's a kind of a more boring and more obvious thing that AI can do for that industry before we get to that.
Excellent. Thanks, Charles. Boriana or Luis, anything to add there?
Maybe
Boriana,
just, maybe just a word when I think about AI and NFTs, the first thing that comes into my mind is the digital art market. I mean, it really helps pushing this up and running. And now with AI, I mean, creation has just really improved. And it has a real impact on it. So I think NFT is also very interesting for digital artists because they can also regulate the resale of their artwork and benefit from the royalties that they will get from that. So yeah, in terms of digital art, I think it has a real implication as well. But we'll talk about copyright later on as well.
Thank you, Boriana. And yeah, as Charles mentioned, I mean, we're going to touch upon intellectual property rights too and patents and whatnot. We have a question that actually just came in. I'm going to read it out and we can take a look at it as part of the discussion on intellectual property rights. But the question basically is, how do you think the way we have to approach patent law, particularly in terms of inventorship and ownership of AI-generated inventions? Boriana, do you want to take that since it came in from the audience? And then we'll look into the questions that we have planned.
Well, yes, there are two questions around patents. How about inventions that have been generated by AI? Who is the owner? And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the UK we recently had a decision about that, saying that the inventor could not be the AI, but had to be a human person. We don't have any regulation or case law in France or around that. But it's most of the practitioners consider that, in fact, the inventor has to be a human being, and an invention coming from a tool, cannot be patentable. So yeah, that would be
okay. Perfect, Boriana.
I just add to that. So I'm not an IP lawyer, and Boriana's English IP law is spot on there, as well as her French and European. So the thing I just wanted to add to that is the question of how existing laws may have to be looked at afresh because we now have these new tools. So as Boriana says, the inventor of a patentable system in the UK has to be a person. That's not because the Patent Act in the UK says, Section 1, if you want to apply for a patent, you better be a person. It's just because the way the Act is written, there was an assumption that the invention would have been made by a person. So it is simply the consequence of all existing legislation makes an assumption about how products and services come about. When this was written years ago in the UK, nobody was sitting around scratching their heads and saying, well, what if automated systems could come up with inventive technologies? They just wrote what would look like a perfectly normal way of approaching the problem. And then when this is, it comes before a court, the judge just reads the act and says, well, I'm sorry, I kind of get I get where you're coming from, that it is the system that seems to have produced the invention, but that's not how the law's been written. So just an amazing example of, I don't think we have to start again, but we got to think differently about all of these questions. So there's a policy question, behind it of should automated systems be capable of being inventors, which I definitely have to defer to Boriana on that, because my IP contextual knowledge is nowhere near good enough to have a good opinion.
I think this is a good opportunity also to take a step back and look at the question that we had planned to sort of launch this discussion on IP. And that question for Boriana again is, how is AI reshaping the landscape of IP rights, and what new challenges and opportunities do they present for trademark and copyright protection? So, Boriana.
Yeah, I mean,
to set the stage.
Yeah.
a bit late, but to set the stage.
Thank you, Mateo. So yeah, I mean, generative AI is definitely a game changer in terms of creation, and also has an impact, of course, on copyright protection. Because in fact, companies and artists can use these tools and to create not only text, but images, videos, music. I mean, it's not only used by companies, but also by creative agencies. And the result is marketing materials, briefs to creative agencies, publicity, I mean, promotion of every type, etc. So in a recent study, by the way, made by Marx, it says that 50% of the companies participating in the study said that they were already using AI tools for marketing activities, and tools they were using were Midjourney, Shutterstock, DALL-E, and for content creation. So definitely there's a huge impact. And in terms of protection, we we have several questions. The first one, of course, being are AI-generated works protectable by copyright? And it's quite controversial, by the way, because to claim copyright protection, a work has to be original and then has to be created by a human, by a human being. And is it possible to claim that the AI tool is used as a tool by, the human creator, and then the result can be protected by copyright? We don't have any case law yet. There are a lot of cases pending. There is one case that was ruled by the Internet Court in Beijing, quite interesting, by the way. And it could be argued that, for example, if there is a substantive implication of the human, of the user of the tool, for example, preparing a very detailed prompt, using several, in the process of creation, using the tool to create the first image, then rework it, and then rework it again with a very detailed prompts, it may be argued that there is a human, intervention, and it's a substantive input. And then the result could be original and protected by copyright. But again, it could be claimed, but it would be better to have some case law on that. So the other question is then, who is the owner of the result? Is it the user, or is it the provider of the AI system? Well, we don't have any answer yet. We will have to read the terms and conditions of the tools, different tools. Most of them consider that the user is the owner of the results, but then you better read really closely the terms and conditions, because they have a lot of exceptions as well. So this would also have to be clarified. Another question that we also have is, how about copyright and trademark infringement? How about all the artworks or trademarks that were included in the input, in the training data, and then appear in the output, in the result that is obtained by the user? And this is more, I would say, a little bit clearer, because if there is a copyright infringement or a trademark infringement, if the original work, initial work, was in the input and the trademark without the authorization of their holders, it could be considered as an infringement. So that would be a little bit easier to handle. And maybe a quick word on the AI Act, because we don't have a lot in the AI Act on IP, but we still have one provision saying that providers of general purpose AI systems have to put in place a policy to comply with the EU law on copyright. And also they have to comply, including through state-of-the-art technologies, says the article, with the reservation of rights expressed by copyright holders. So this is quite interesting. So this also refers to the text and data mining exception, which says that copyright holders have the right to reserve the use, to opt out of the system, and to say that they don't want to have their copyrighted works in the inputs, in the data that is collected for the training of the AI. So it means that if it's not in the initial data, it should not be in the output, in the result that is obtained by the user. So this may be quite interesting to put in place and to consider by companies, especially that could be used in future fights, in future cases, because then the holder of the rights can say that he did not authorize the use of this of its artworks, of its trademarks in the system, and that the use was made without authorization.
Very complex matter, definitely. Luis, Charles, anything to add there before we switch gears again?
It's very interesting in touching on the topic of who owns the IP, especially because the way the technology is advanced. You know, in the past, most things relied on machine learning, which meant a lot of data and human intervention to train it. And really, I think most of what we're talking about now is in the generative AI area, where it's creating things based on a pre-trained model. So no human intervention. So it has gone from simply executing instructions and going through decision trees to actually some pretty impressive thinking, and creativity in its answer. So stay tuned, I'd say. Interesting to see where it lands.
Yeah, I think all three of us sound like we're interested in the same thing. So there's a question sitting behind the law and the policy and the technology, which is AI creative? And I think you normally see that question asked by someone who then wants to tell you that AI is not creative. It is a characteristically human thing to be creative. I'm not so sure. I think that I like the analogy of where we get the copyright cases relating to songs, which essentially rely on expert evidence and then a judge deciding whether a song is so similar to a previous song that it infringes the previous song's copyright. But the artists who defend themselves say, I didn't copy the song. What I did was I listened to all the music. I've grown up surrounded by music. I like this type of music, this genre, this style, these artists. So if my music sounds something like theirs, that's inevitable. And that's often a good enough answer for them not to be found to be infringing. But then we hold the machines to a different standard. We say they've read everything and they're generating things that do not exist until they've been produced by the system. And then we're saying that they're not creative. Well, to me, they are doing something very, very analogous to what humans are doing. And I think we have to start thinking a bit differently about machines and our relationship with machines.
Thank you, Charles. Excellent. Let's switch gears. We still have another 25 minutes. Again, meant to everyone listening in, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, just drop them in the Q&A, and we should be able to cover those towards the end. Let's switch gears now and look a little bit at RegTech solutions for compliance. This is a question for Luis. But, how is AI transforming regulatory compliance, and what role do cognitive learning and advanced analytics play in this transformation? I know you have Complyport has a software called Vika, which focuses on AI and helps consultants with, the regulatory compliance. So, Luis.
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned, I think most of the focus now is really on the power that you can get out of generative AI. Tools like Vika Chat essentially put an Einstein potentially in your basement. These are now tools that you can use. Now, regulatory law-wise, as I said earlier, the responsibility still lies on the entity to make the ultimate decisions. They can't point at the Einstein in the basement because they're not the registered officer. The entity is. So models are everywhere, and it's important to pick out ones that fit the organization right, whether that's ones that are speedy or more specialized. Obviously, I think with regulation is important. And what do we get? We're looking at really things of picking up efficiency. So instant access to information is great, right? It's at your fingertips. Now, instead of maybe spending an hour to go search for something, you can get it right in front of you and decide if that's what you want to use. So quicker, more accurate, faster identification. And then if you're using it in operations, it can spot areas of risk for you. So you have more efficient reporting. And that kind of gets us into predictive analytics. AI is such a broad word to describe just about anything with advanced. Predictive analytics is one subset of this. So there's no doubt about it. A machine is just more consistent time after time. There have been studies where you have a control set of documents and you have 5 groups of experts look at those same exact documents. They do not agree with each other more than half of the time on the same set of documents. It's very interesting. And so an AI will be more consistent and then also help you spot patterns that human eyes just get tired and miss. It just doesn't get tired. It keeps going. So this leads essentially to more proactive approach to managing your regulatory requirements. There are so many. And it helps to have something that's consistently flagging up. And maybe if you make a decision that isn't like one of your previous decisions, it can go ahead and tap your shoulder again of, hey, this one, you might want to take another look at this one because you said no, but you said yes 5 times earlier. And we touched on efficiency, but there's also just kind of speed as in of itself. Especially with regulations changing as rapidly as they do. So when we're talking about speed, we're talking about speed about being able to implement, get your staff up to date on what the new rule is, because you now have these suggestions being put out in front of you as things are popping up. You have a co-pilot, so to say, ensuring that you can remain compliant. Not only based on regulation, but your business policies, rules and processes, the systems and controls that you put in place. So it makes it easier to have full audit trails, be able to test and monitor these things as you're going. On the challenges, I mentioned earlier, transparency. It's a critical one. Need to know how the decisions were made. And you have to have better prompt engineering skills. What can it do? And think about the biggest limitation, maybe being you. Are you using the tool to its fullest advantage? Or are you over-relying on automated decisions without the human oversight? So in my book, humans are still needed, pretty important. They're not going to take your job. But I think as a company and people, it's definitely a tool that should be used. It definitely has a lot of advantages across those areas.
Excellent. Thank you, Luis. Charles and Boriana, anything to add in terms of regulatory technology solutions, etc.?
Yeah, maybe a couple of quick points. So worth calling out the most people will probably have seen press around Klarna's use of AI in its chatbots. So if you haven't put it into a new search engine, Klarna AI from the last few days. So what got a lot of attention there was Klarna saying that they needed far fewer people. But sitting behind that was they also said, this is exactly as Lewis is describing, the AI-powered customer bots were much quicker than human operated. They were more accurate, and when rated by the customers preferred the bots. And one of the transparency points that the EU AI Act calls out is an obligation on users to disclose when AI and automated systems are being used. If you're dealing with an automated system, you should be aware of it. But generally, people have been delighted to be dealing with automated systems. Who wouldn't want an Einstein in their basement? AI will not replace Luis's copywriting skills anytime soon, I think we can say. He should immediately be promoted to head of marketing as well as all his other exec roles.
Boriana, anything from your end? Okay, perfect. So I have one question that I think this is going to take us quite a bit, but it's just basically looking at the future. So we're going to wrap up with this question. We still have some 15 minutes or so we have plenty of time to sort of delve into this. But basically looking at the future trends in AI. So, you know, given your diverse backgrounds and expertise, what do you all believe are the most promising and potentially disruptive trends in AI over the next 5 years? This could be within your field or, you know, any other that, you know, you might think of. And how should businesses and regulators prepare for these changes? Charles, I'm going to give you an opportunity to get us started with that one.
Okay, gosh, I didn't know I'd go first. So let me start with it. That's such a big topic, maybe 2 or 3 sort of headline points.
We have time,
AI,
so it's okay.
Yeah,
I left
okay.
it. I left this. I wanted to give this a good chunk of time. So,
so one, AI agents operating together. So what we see is the ability of automated systems to not only operate together, but operate together under their own oversight. So if you run what the techies call agent swarms, one of the things that you'll see is that they perform tasks. You keep prompting them as Louis says. You give them the instructions, you give them the architecture, you tell them how and why. And this is relatively sophisticated stuff. You're not going to do this on your phone, but it's not it's impossibly difficult or expensive to build it. So the agents operate together and they figure out how to operate together. And one of the things that we've seen most interestingly is that one of the bots starts being deferred to by the others. So you get this kind of hierarchy. We talk a lot in the technology and policy about emergent systems. So what we're describing here are order and intelligence appearing from something that doesn't have those characteristics. So look out for agent swarms. I think we will personally have agents that support us and are extremely important to us and our lives. People will have relationships with agents that are personal to them that they develop. Maybe the final thing I'd say is don't be intimidated by this. Just practice, practice, practice. So Lisa's describing putting prompts into the prompt engines. Just these things are available on the browser. You can get apps, download a few. They cost generally $20 a month. That is unbelievably good value for what the premium tiers can do. I'm on commission from nobody in saying that it is worth paying for them and having a bunch of them. So you try them at different tasks, and you give the same tool different tasks, and you give different tools the same task, so you can figure out how they will work. You don't need to be Bill Gates to be able to engage with this stuff. They are built to be systems that are available and accessible. Maybe a point around hallucinations. I've written on this lots of times before. I think hallucinations are capable of a technical solution. So we now have AI systems that are doing what the technical people call setting a truth value on something. So what does that mean? It means if I ask, we had the example of the chatbot that gave bad advice about buying an airline ticket. So if you run a truth system across that, what it's doing is saying the answer is generated by the generative AI, but it's checking, has the generative AI got the answer to that question within the environment of data that it's accessing, or has it not? Because the problem with generative AI is it doesn't like to be unhelpful. So it will always answer your question, whether it knows the answer or not. If it has the answer inside its environment, it will very, very likely give you the right answer. If it doesn't have the answer inside its environment, it will just say something because it wants you to be happy that you got an answer, but it's very, very likely to be wrong. So it's testing how the system is generating the answer by reference to available data. So whenever there's something that seems to be problematic, the techies just go off and they come back with a fix. So the more we're engaging with it and the more we're surfacing things that don't quite work or could be better or those things, the more folks like Louise and others will just go off and bring back the stuff that we do want. This is just an amazing, amazing time to be engaging with these and operating. And I think I say this very often, so anyone who's seen me before would have heard this before. I'm constantly asked the biggest risk in relation to AI. For sure, it is the risk of not using it.
That's a good one. Hadn't heard that, but yeah, makes sense. Boriana, what does the future look like to you?
Well, maybe a year or 2 years ago, you've heard about this word metaverse. So what about metaverse and generative AI? I mean, that would be a quite interesting combination because, I mean, the technology was not there maybe a year or 2 years ago for the metaverse, and now it's improving. And definitely generative AI will have an impact on the development of the different types of metaverse, with also not only generative AI, but also natural language processing, computer vision. It will help implementing a better and quicker way of moving within this virtual world. So I think that, well, I'm a lawyer, but this is that would be my my wish to help these universes to develop. And maybe another thing would be to really, in the next 5 years, if we can have better working tools for lawyers, that would be nice as well, because everybody is talking about AI, that AI will take over on lawyers and in-house people. Well, it's not happening now. I don't know if it's going to happen within 5 years, but if we can have more efficient tools without any fake cases, hallucinations, and maybe combining different functionalities of the different tools, that would be really helpful for us. Yeah. And also to the clients, because all the repetitive work will disappear, and we will be able to provide much, I mean, high level and straight to the point opinion.
I mean, are there any tools that have been developed for lawyers that sort of work well, or not yet?
Sure. You have Harvey that we're currently testing. You have Copilot. You have different types of tools around ChatGPT, but it's not perfect. So we're testing and working on the tools, They can help us improve efficiency, but it's maybe 20 to 30%, so it's not something very operational yet.
No, that makes sense.
I would just call out that. So I think Louis said it, and this sounds really, really mundane. But, it's such a good use case. If anyone else is like me and they spend 1 hour a day working and 8 hours a day looking for things, then AI is for you.
Great. Last but not least, Louis, what does the future look
Well,
like?
listen, it's the question asked about the most disruptive tools as well as part of that, and it's clearly disruptive. I mean, you've probably all used a WebMD or something like that to look up some kind of ailment, and now you're all mini doctors at home, right? And this advancement now with access to information just makes it quicker for you to be an expert on anything. I love technology, and I actually didn't get into the whole generative AI chat thing until just about 18 months ago, because I just didn't, it moved so fast. I was shocked when I saw what it had advanced to, because I tested 3 years ago, just wasn't there. It is a tutor. Now you can ask it, it's personalized and gives you what you want. It is the librarian, it brings you the book, and not only that, but the page that you want, or several pages that you want. It's pretty amazing, and so it is disruptive in our industry for Complyport consultants. It's definitely pulling the strings there where that's why we're transitioning to. And if I give a cheeky plug, Charles said try many tools. Well, one of them, go to vika.chat, you get 30 free queries, and you can go ahead and give it a test, just like Charles said, because you can ask it anything on FCA, HMRC, acts that have to do with all AML, import, export, anything really has to do with sanctions, and you can get the subtext that you're looking for, verify if that's what you want, and ask better questions. You just keep drilling down. You just keep asking more questions until you get to the segment that you need. So the challenge is for us humans to be better at asking the right questions and using it as a tool in our interactions. Vetting the information, they make mistakes too, just like humans do. They misunderstand the question. I think Charles mentioned hallucination. They make up stuff. It sounds really credible, but they do make up things. So you do have to vet the information. Ultimately, you need to make the right decision. Read the references, see what is plugging, and make sure it applies to you. But to me, I'm just fascinated with the opportunities of where it will take us. And with disruption comes opportunity. So lots to do.
I maybe add in, I used a different example for the hallucinations, but the famous ones for lawyers, I guess we have lots of lawyers listening, were the guys in the US who put briefs to the courts that were written by GPT and not checked. Right. And so we all learn from the first person who's embarrassed by using these things. But the point I make about the integrations is you can plug in, you could do it manually very easily, but you can plug in Westlaw and similar tools to these things. So they would be checking that if the system has just, it knows as a lawyer, it knows that you're trying to find arguments that would support your client. So it's trying to helpfully promote them to you. So you absolutely do need to check the cases, but that's a trivial thing. We've all had for decades Westlaw and similar tools on our desktop that enable us to check, is a case really a case?
Excellent. I think with that, I think we've reached the end. We have a few more minutes left. I'll let Ben jump back on board and say goodbye to us. But thank you very much, Boriana, Louis, and Charles. I think it was a very exciting and insightful discussion on a wide array of issues related to AI. And we should repeat this maybe 2 or 3 years from now, and we'll have a completely different discussion. We might actually invite even a panelist that is an AI creation to join us.
Brilliant. Yeah. And please, I think we all kind of post on LinkedIn. Please, everyone in the audience, connect with us, follow us, let us follow what you're doing. Everybody's figuring this out together and sharing lots of great information. So
Exactly.
it'd be great to hear from other people.
Yeah, we could all figure it out together as we go along and, you know, share our experiences. So great.
True.
Ben, I'm going to hand things over. Thank you very much again, Boriana, Luis, Charles, and also GLI for, you know, this opportunity to co-host this event together, and looking forward to the next one.
Well, thank you all for a fantastic hour discussing the AI landscape. I'm sure the phrase, who wouldn't want an Einstein in your basement, will be trending worldwide by the end of the day. I'm sure we could have very easily filled another hour there as well, but it's good to save something for next time. I hope everyone who's tuned in today has found the session as interesting, dynamic, and useful as I have. All that's really left for me to say is please do keep your eyes open for more from the GLI team around our AI, machine learning, and big data resources. Do take a look at the AGRC and how they can help you further. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions, please do reach out to us. Thanks again to our panel, Charles, Boriana, Luis, and Mateo, and all the best, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.